ABC comedian Craig Rucastle is leading a high-powered push to overhaul Federal Parliament's broadcasting rules, which prevent satire or ridicule.
Under current guidelines, broadcasters are only allowed to use parliamentary vision if they follow a stringent set of regulations, and the Chaser star wants that changed. Political reporter Andrew Green spoke to Craig Rucastle in Canberra.
Craig Rucastle, welcome to ABC News 24.
Good to be here.
Is the Australian Parliament an anti-comedian zone? What sort of restrictions do you face?
Well, the Australian Parliament, you cannot use the parliamentary footage for satire or ridicule, which means that programs that are determined to be satirical cannot use any footage. No matter how serious or analytical the content is, they cannot use that footage. So it's quite a big restriction, and it means that it often pushes more satirical programs away from actual analysis of what's been said in Parliament and more towards the kind of often more lighter and fluffier stuff outside of Parliament.
So why do you think the Parliament is so precious? Most people might think that politicians do satire and ridicule pretty well themselves, but why can't we actually use that vision for satire?
Look, it's a law that's been on the books since we first broadcast Parliament back in the early 1990s, and the reality is that we don't really know why. There's very little discussion of it. A lot of the parliamentarians we've spoken to don't even have awareness that this rule exists. So the reasoning behind it is a bit hard. We're quite happy to argue against the reasoning, but we don't even know what that is. And the reality is that footage is used by news organisations, by chat shows, by morning news shows, by shows like Insiders even, and they use parliamentary footage and they use it for comedic purposes. So it's not necessarily, it doesn't restrict that to happening. It just seems to restrict satirical programs, which, whether it be merely comedic or whether it has some kind of actual analysis in it.
Is Australia alone with these sort of restrictions, and do you think there may actually be a specific reason to protect the austere nature of the place, perhaps?
I don't think that the reason to protect the austere nature of the place is really that relevant nowadays. I think the behaviour that's seen in Parliament and the way that that footage is treated by other media organisations means that it's not really a law that serves any purpose. Australia's not alone in this. There's also in the UK and Canada, places like that have a similar rule, but in the UK they're also looking into this rule at the moment and seeing whether it's relevant. And in Australia's case particularly, it seems to be very much against the jurisprudence which suggests we have a constitutional protection of free speech on political and governmental matters. So, I think in the Australian sense we've got quite a good avenue to contest this.
What do you have to do to change the rules? Which people do you have to convince?
Well, there's currently a committee at Parliament, a joint committee of the Broadcasting and Parliamentary Proceedings Committee, which will actually get together and is looking into this. And we've put in a submission, along with other media organisations, on the general broadcast rules. And we're hoping that through discussing it with them and, I guess, just going through the problems with it, we can hopefully get it changed that way. It then has to go through Parliament as well. If not, I don't know. Maybe there's a legal avenue available, but that's a long way down the track. And we're hoping that just by actually having the conversation about it and showing that whatever purpose it has, it doesn't really serve that purpose, and it seems to be an unfair restriction on freedom of speech. We're hoping that maybe we can get it changed that way.
Pollies can be a precious bunch. What do you think your chances are?
I know. Well, I think inertia is probably against us a little bit, and politicians, certainly a lot of them we've spoken to seem to be quite, firstly surprised, and then like, well, that's fine, we should be able to be satirised. I mean, they get satirised in cartoons every day. It's not like it doesn't happen out there. It's merely that use of the parliamentary footage, which is, of course, quite central to a TV show, particularly. So I don't know. They do take themselves fairly seriously at times, but let's hope that they take a step back and see the broader picture. Maybe if they think about it and think, well, it'll be my opponent who will be getting satirised, and then maybe they'll pass a change.
Craig Rucastle, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Now we'll just bring you some news that's